Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is the first part of What If Naruto Was in High School DxD. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. Naruto pulled out his orange bento box and sat down underneath one of his favorite trees on the Kyoa Academy grounds. He then unveiled his pair of chopsticks and began to dig into the lunch he'd made that same morning. The spring breeze blew over the young blonde teen gently while the bright green tree leaves above him rustled in the wind as he thought, it really is peaceful here. Nowhere near as hectic as it was back in Konoha. Indeed it is, Naruto Kurama responded to his thoughts. It's also exceptionally boring, the teenaged young man finished for him. And I'd have to agree you on that, Kurama. Yo, a voice the whiskered teen recognized called to him. The blonde turned his head towards the person and watched as a spiky-haired boy with his hair a dark brown ran over towards the sitting Naruto. Naruto? What is it, Issei? He asked while Issei made his way over to the tree everyone at Kyoa knew was Naruto's and Naruto's alone. The few who'd challenged the former shinobi for that spot found out very quickly that, even without the ability to use chakra anymore, the whiskered blonde was very territorial. Just want to reiterate that I still blame you for that, you damn fox. Oh, shut up and pay attention to your friend, Kurama responded with annoyance. The amber-eyed 16-year-old clambered into the shade and let out a few gasps for air as he took a seat right next to Naruto. Go right ahead, the blonde began while offering a bite of an egg roll to Issei. You didn't have anything for breakfast, I take it? Issei shook his head as he took the egg roll, tossed it in his mouth, and devoured it greedily. He then answered the blonde, no. Mom and Dad have been on vacation the past few days. They should make it back tonight, though. I see, Naruto responded carefully as he bit down on another bite of food. Naruto, his inner fox piped in from inside his head. Can you feel that? I can, he told the Biju. Oh, I almost forgot, the brown-haired boy exclaimed. He then turned and looked directly at Naruto as he asked, do you remember Yuma-chan? The blue-eyed young man blew out a frustrated breath before reminding the other boy, I was out sick the past few days, remember? I should have followed that girl better, he told himself darkly while preventing his facial features from showing any indication of his internal strife. You'd have been slaughtered and you know it, Kurama reiterated for him. Face it, without chakra, all you can really do is sense presences. Had you gone after someone on even her level of power as you are now, you'd be dead. Naruto's face twitched at the blunt statement from his inner partner. He was well aware of that fact, but having it pointed out in such a manner wasn't called for in his mind. Oh, Issei blinked dumbly at Naruto's answer to his query. I guess I forgot that I never introduced you to her. But do you think I'm a liar like Matsuda and Motohama? Naruto openly snorted at the question as he told the boy, Issei, you're many things, weak as a newborn, just as hard-headed as I am, and quite possibly the biggest pervert I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, and believe me when I say that actually means something positive. But a liar? No way. You couldn't lie to save your life. Back where I'm from, a 6-year-old could lie better than you. So if you say you had a girlfriend while I was out sick, even though I'll be skeptical, I do believe you, Issei. You're the only person I asked who believes me, the naive boy cried as he then wrapped Naruto in a hug that left the blonde feeling slightly uncomfortable since he could now feel his shoulder getting a little damp. You're a wonderful friend, Naruto, Issei insisted after peeling himself off of the blonde. I'm just someone who knows a liar when he sees one, Issei, the whiskered boy repeated, and you're not a liar. Now, can I eat the rest of my lunch in peace? I'd also like to finish that homework first period gave us since I have the time. Issei Hyuta stood up and let out a few chuckles as he told Naruto, you're way too serious about that stuff, Naruto. You ought to be focusing on getting your hands on some girls before we graduate like me. I mean, can physics offer you the splendid view and feeling that a wonderful pair of oppi can? Well, I say you should focus on losing your virginity before claiming I prefer class over breasts, Naruto fired back teasingly at the teen, making Issei freeze and stare at him in shock. You mean? Issei stammered in reply. Yep, the whiskered teen chuckled as the perverted boy's jaw went slack. It was back before I came to Tokyo, and no, I won't give you any details, he told Issei sternly as the gold-eyed teen made to ask. All I'll say is this, fit women have amazing bodies, Issei. The perverted boy then turned and sprinted away from the cackling blonde at full speed. As Issei made his way further away in his dust cloud, Naruto heard, even Naruto has seen a real pair before me. The world is just too cruel. What did you just say? The voice of Matsuda echoed over the grounds. Did you just say what I think you said? Motohama added on. Naruto lost his virginity before us, both other members of the perverted trio screamed in disbelief so loud it left an echo over the entire academy. Meanwhile, Naruto was currently rolling on the ground and shaking in semi-silent laughter at the reactions that particular bombshell had gotten out of the perverse Sunin. I wonder how bad the rumor mill's gonna make that bit of news, he thought aloud after ceasing his chuckles and managing to prop his back up against the trunk of the tree. I was never one to care for gossip, Kurama chimed in, that was more Matatabi, but what these humans in this world come up with never leaves me unentertained. I'll give you that, the whiskered blonde replied verbally. He then looked to his left and noticed a group of girls standing about 30 yards away from him and realized just who was always followed around by that many females at once. Hey there, Kiba, he greeted his fellow blonde politely as the group of fangirls followed the heartthrob around campus. Hello there, Uzumaki-san, Kiba Yuoto returned with a polite nod, smile, and wave of his hand. How are you today? Can't really complain, he shrugged back in answer. I was right, he then thought. Issei's aura now feels like how Kiba, Konako-chan, and the entire student councils feel. Just what happened yesterday? He silently wondered. I can't tell you, the gigantic fox in his belly repeated. While the powers from all those people and now Issei feel quite dark, it's not necessarily evil. That's good to know, Yuoto answered the other blonde. Well, I must be going, Uzumaki-san. Class is about to begin again. The whiskered, spiky-headed teen replied with a shrug. I may not even bother going back today. Exams are still a few months away, after all. No need to rush. The pretty boy with the fangirls shook his head in bemusement before saying, no wonder people seem to think you're a delinquent, Uzumaki-san. Skipping class. My teachers can't really complain though, he fired back. Last I checked I was 4th in the year. 3rd now, apparently, Kiba informed him, making the former shinobi raise an inquisitive eyebrow at how he'd gotten that bit of information since not even his teachers knew that yet. The only ones who had access to that information were the student council and the top staff of the school, and him, since no lock could hold him out. Well, that's fantastic, he drawled out sarcastically as he stood up and dusted off his pants. Naruto collected his bento before sticking his hands behind his head, turning, and beginning to walk away from Kiba and his little following. I guess I'll see ya around, he finished with a dismissive wave of his hand before continuing on until he simply walked out the Kyoa front gate. The former shinobi whistled a jaunty tune to himself as he made his way across town and to the apartment he was currently calling home. He made certain to always keep his eyes looking out for any of those pesky police officers, as they were called, because the first time he'd skipped class they'd dragged him back to it, as it was apparently against the law for someone his age not being in school during school hours. Assholes. Naruto walked into the practically empty building and made his way straight to the elevator. Once the slinging doors had opened he entered, pressed the button for the top floor, and rode the machine up to the floor his room was on. As soon as the doors opened up once the elevator reached the 9th floor, Naruto exited the elevator. He then began to make his way through the basically deserted, but eerily clean, hallway until he reached the apartment his scholarship gave him, Room 917. After pulling out his keys and unlocking the only occupied room in the entire complex, Naruto entered his domain. Immediately upon stepping through the doorway, he jumped back into the hall to avoid the falling bucket of water he'd left as a trap and caught it before the contents could spill out and make a mess. Still got it, he grinned to himself as he set the aluminum pail just inside the door and next to his umbrella stand. The young teen's blue eyes darted around the room at speeds that would have made a hawk jealous in an effort to determine if there had been any intruders in his time away. Ever since his apartment had been broken into 3 months ago, he always left things in a random order when he went to school every morning in order to prevent a pattern from being noticed. Noticing nothing out of place, he heaved a sigh before closing the door behind him, knowing there was no need to lock the door in a seemingly abandoned building while he was there. The high school shinobi then walked across his large living room and threw his backpack on the blue sofa as he made his way into the standard-sized kitchen. His eyes scanned over to the lone window and stopped as he stared at it in shock. "Well, they fixed that quick," he noted aloud. "Isn't that the window you broke this morning to test this building's owner's response time?" Kurama queried. "Yep," he answered the fox. "I shattered that thing pretty good too. So that means our hunch was correct." "It does," he nodded in agreement. "It looks like I'm not just paranoid, Kurama. This apartment is being watched. I'm telling you it's true." Issei insisted once more. Naruto returned with a roll of his eyes, though he was inwardly filing all the provided information away. "And that fountain's made of gold," he stated sarcastically while pointing at the park's water spout. "I swear it upon the greatness of Appai that I'm telling the truth, Naruto," the brown-haired boy declared while they walked through the park together. "I really do see better in the dark, and I really can hear things from far away." "Prove it." "Fine," Issei huffed in agreement. He then pointed towards a tree about 100 yards to the two friends left and told the blonde, "I can hear a bird in that tree's branches, and, now that I'm focused on it, I can see that it's a swallow." "Yeah, right." Naruto started before his sharp eyes caught movement from the aforementioned tree and witnessed a red swallow fly out of its highest branches with a small chirp. "Huh. I guess you're really not pulling my leg, Issei. So we know his sight and hearing have each been amplified at least tenfold now," Kurama summarized for Naruto. "And the only major difference is the new aura around him," Naruto continued. "Then the source of the energy change is most likely the cause of his senses becoming so acute. It's like he's using chakra to enhance his senses. It looks like things are getting a little less boring around here, Naruto." Before Naruto could even reply to his inner friend, a brief sense of vertigo washed over him that nearly made him fall over. The vertigo was accompanied by a small flash of nausea that he had to force down by using his ironclad willpower. "Whoa," Issei realized once he looked back at his friend. The brunette propped one of his hands on the bent over Naruto's chest with his other on the blonde's back. "You okay, Naruto?" "Why yeah," he replied with a small grimace. The former shinobi managed to right himself after a few deep breaths and stood back up. He smiled at his friend gratefully as he expressed his thanks, Issei. "I'll be fine. Must have been something I ate." "You really need to," Issei began to scold, but Naruto's eyes went wide as his finely tuned senses picked up something he hadn't felt since coming to this world, killing intent. "Issei, down!" Naruto screamed as he pushed his confused friend down onto the ground just before two flashes of light went over their heads like a pair of projectile weapons. The two teenage boys rolled on the ground together for a moment until Naruto managed to separate himself from the now frozen Issei and rolled himself into a crouch facing the direction the projectiles just came from. The shinobi glared heatedly at the man he decided was the perpetrator of that last attack on Issei's person. The potential enemy was a middle-aged gentleman-looking man who stood at a slightly above average height. This man's attire consisted of a pale violet trench coat over a white dress shirt with a matching ascot, black pants and shoes, and a dark fedora sitting atop his head. "I don't know who you are, but you're not who I'm after, human," the man addressed the battle-hardened warrior. I'm after that stray devil over there. Stray devil? Naruto briefly wondered before filing his words away to think on at a later moment. He's obviously after Issei, but why? Think on that later, Kurama reminded him. This man feels similar to that Yuma girl, Naruto. You're right, Kurama, the whiskered blonde realized. Who are you? He demanded of the other man. The man's beady dark blue eyes narrowed at Naruto as he answered, nothing here concerns you, human. How you're still conscious and standing while my barrier is up is a mystery, but don't presume to meddle in affairs that don't concern you. The hell they don't, the Jinchuriki shouted angrily. You just tried to turn my friend into Issei Kebab. And nobody hurts my friends, he finished in a feral growl. The enemy let out a few chuckles in amusement while shaking his head a few times. A human who thinks he's on par with a fallen angel? Laughable, the trench coat wearing man exclaimed with a hearty bellow. Fallen angel? The blonde thought on his words. Enough stalling, the fallen angel stated after calming his laughter. Last chance, human. Leave that stray devil to me and forget you ever saw me, or else you will end up sharing his fate. Naruto's cerulean orbs narrowed and he slid his feet into a battle-ready stance that he'd learned from the toads as he replied stonily, you want him, you gotta go through me. An insane grin crossed over the fallen angel's face as he heard Naruto's answer to his warnings. Very well, he agreed ominously. If that's your wish, then you can join that devil in oblivion, he declared with relish as a jagged spear with a two-pronged tip appeared in his hands and charged at the blonde. Fast. The shinobi realized as the enemy crossed the 30 yards between them in just over a full second. He then ducked under a horizontal swipe at his neck and countered quickly with a strong right fist buried into the man's gut. But predictable, he finished with a grin as his enemy doubled over and gasped from breath. Naruto quickly jumped back out of reach from that glowing spear while the fallen angel gathered himself. Mad chuckles that would have frozen most men came from the older enemy, but Naruto had dealt with Orochimaru's crazy cackling, so he felt no fear of the man. Naruto! Issei exclaimed in shock, but Naruto's eyes never strayed from his opponent. Stay back, Issei, the shinobi ordered icily, making Issei freeze at his tone. He's after you, and to do that he'll need to make it past me. But. No buts. Naruto shouted intensely as his thoughts briefly ventured down an alley he'd rather they didn't. I can handle this guy. Even without my chakra, he finished in an unheard mumble for himself. Is that so? The fallen angel asked with a sense of superiority that made Naruto sick to his stomach. Well then, why don't we test that? He screamed insanely as he threw his spear at the blonde. Not feeling like testing out the type of damage that self-made weapon could dish out, Naruto ducked to the side before falling backwards into his hands in order to avoid the man's fist. He then utilized his flexibility to get out of the way of another punch and spear thrust before executing a back handspring to separate himself from the opponent. However, the fallen angel wasn't letting him get away. Once he'd landed on his feet, Naruto had to spin to his right in order to avoid another spear thrust. Naruto and his opponent then engaged in a deadly dance where the blonde ducked, spun, and twisted his body away from the new kunai-looking spear of his enemy while continually being forced to retreat backwards. The Jinchuriki jumped back once more to avoid a particularly long swipe at his midsection and felt his back slam into something rough and much larger than him. Realizing that he'd been forced into backing against a tree, Naruto's eyes widened for an instant and the fallen angel smirked before thrusting his spear at the blonde's head. The side of his mouth twitched before Naruto avoided the attack by simply leaning his head to the right, and the first 6 inches of the spear's blade dug into the tree trunk behind him. The shinobi countered by hitting his foe with a faster-than-sight right cross that made the fallen angel stumble backwards, but he managed to keep a grip on his weapon. Naruto then reached up and grabbed the spear's shaft with his left hand tightly, used that handhold to vault himself off of the ground, and delivered a devastating right kick directly to the side of the man's face, making him leave the ground from the force used and sprawl out on the ground. The spear then dissipated in the air while he'd still been holding it, forcing Naruto to spin in the air to counteract his momentum and land on one knee in a crouch. The blonde then stood up and sucked in a few greedy breaths as he felt his lungs burn from the effort he'd had to exert in the last 10 minutes. If that much got me this winded, then I must really be losing my touch, he gasped out between rasps. Just goes to show how much you shinobi all relied on chakra to enhance your abilities, Kurama pointed out lazily. That guy was on par with a green Chuyunin at best, and he actually put you on the ropes until he gave you that chance, Naruto. No, he petulantly denied while visualizing the smirk crossing Kurama's massive face. I was simply lulling him into a false sense of security so he'd let his guard down. Whatever helps you sleep at night, the fox snorted patronizingly. Well, he conceded to his friend, it has been 6 months since I actually was able to really, seriously, train. Naruto. Issei's frantic voice broke Naruto out of his mental debate and made him turn to see the brown-haired boy running over to his side. Are you okay, Issei? Naruto asked with concern in his tone. Any of his attacks end up hitting you? The golden-eyed youth shook his head in the negative before his eyes lit up and he began, but that was so cool, Naruto. I didn't know you could fight like that. Why didn't you ever say you could? Can you teach me how to fight like that? How long have you been able to kick ass like that? Okay, Naruto stopped him before he hyperventilated. Breathe, Issei. The boy did as instructed and Naruto began to answer your questions. You never asked, I can teach you a little but not all, and for as long as I can remember. Sweet. Issei proclaimed gleefully with stars in his eyes and a fist thrown into the air. I'm buds with the biggest badass at Konoha and nobody but me knows it, he exclaimed as he began to make his way away from Naruto and towards the defeated fallen angel. Now Naruto's gonna teach me how to be just as much of a badass and the girls won't be able to stay away from me. They'll be all, oh, Issei. You're so strong. Please let me bear your children. I'll finally achieve my dream of seeing a real pair of oppai without needing to peek. Issei, you really shouldn't. Naruto started to warn his friend, but his breath hitched as he saw the supposedly unconscious man's fingers twitch. Issei, move, he commanded as his body moved towards his friend. You're mine, devil, the fallen angel screamed with glee as he suddenly sprouted 2 black, feathery wings and used them to lift his body from the ground before summoning one more spear of light and charging at the stunned Issei. As the fallen angel beat his wings furiously and got closer far too fast for him to react, Issei could only close his eyes and hold his breath while awaiting his end. The sound of a wet splurge caused the brown-haired youth to open his eyes and freeze in shock at the sight his eyes recorded for him. Naruto stood in front of him with the man's kunai-shaped spear pierced completely through his stomach. The blonde stood strong as his fierce blue eyes glared at his killer with such complete fury in them that even Issei was cowed even though the look wasn't directed in his direction. Both of the shinobi's shaking arms gripped the spear tightly and held it there. You will not harm my friend. Naruto howled at the fallen angel before pulling his left hand off of the spear and connecting a harsh uppercut into the enemy's jaw, sending the winged man into the air. As the man flapped his wings once to steady himself in the air and set his jaw again, Naruto coughed out a thick glob of blood and fell to his knees while pain racked his body. The spear of light then disappeared and the sudden lack of anything in his body forced the former shinobi to fall on the ground face first while a puddle of blood began to pool beneath his shivering body. Damn it! He mentally cursed as his mind began to blank out. Am I really going to die here? Kurama, can't you do your healing me thing? I only wish I could, Naruto, Kurama responded with melancholy. However, without open tenketsu, my chakra can't flow through your body. Looks like this really is the end, kid. A few moments of silence passed once Naruto felt that news sink in. But, what'll happen to you? He asked timidly. I mean, won't you just reform after a few years like you would back in the elemental nations? I doubt it, Naruto, the Biju answered with a resigned air. Back there was enough residual chakra in the air for a Biju to reform after a few years, but here, where there isn't even the faintest whiff of chakra in the world. I'm sorry, Kurama, Naruto apologized to his friend. My useless hero streak was the death of us both, just like you told me after the war. Yeah, Kurama agreed sadly. I only wish it wasn't truly the end. Well, you know what that headmaster called death in that book series I read after making it here, right? The next great adventure. The last thing Naruto's eyes recorded for him was a flash of bright, crimson light. Rias Gremory and her peerage were preparing to make themselves known as soon as Hyuda's friend, Naruto Uzumaki, had fallen to the fallen angel's spear of light. A pity, the despicable creature in the air spoke with a sneer. He would have made a fine familiar. Issei was still frozen at the sight he'd just been forced to witness, and Rias couldn't blame him at all for it. To watch as a close friend gave their life to save yours was supposed to be a very traumatic event. He must be in shock, the crimson-haired young woman thought with a slight frown. Akeno, Kiba, Konako, she then called, and all of the available members of her peerage looked to her. Be ready. If the fallen angel makes another move towards Issei, then we will intervene. Hi, Baku, each of them acknowledged with a nod. Show me a glimpse, Issei, Ria silently implored of him. This should be more than enough to awaken your sacred gear. Show me why I had to use all 8 pawn pieces on you. She'd planned on helping him obtain his sacred gear after explaining everything about yesterday and today to him, but she recognized that the scene would likely be a shortcut for him to awaken his power. If anything, the sacred gear awakening would help convince him even more than just knowledge of who that Amano Yuma girl really was to him. Well, I suppose that is the fate of those who don't understand their weakness, the crow in the air mocked Uzumaki's sacrifice, making Rias clench her fist in anger. Such a sacrifice is not to be mocked, she thought in rage. En Naruto, Issei called out in a broken voice that hurt the Gremory heiress more than she thought it would. The stricken young man fell to his knees in the puddle of dark red liquid, making the reflection of the moon ripple. Come on, man, he nearly begged. This isn't funny. Get up, he cried out in desperation as a few tears fell from his golden eyes and dripped off of his chin. Get up, he truly begged of the blonde on the ground, but there was no reaction from him at all. Issei's tear-stained face then looked up into the distorted night sky and a blood-curdling scream tore from his throat, and that scream made Rias' decision for her. The azure-eyed beauty felt a tug on her skirt and looked down to see her rook, Konako, looking up at her with pleading eyes. Baku, she asked in her usual monotone, but Rias had been around the girl long enough to notice the sadness in her eyes. Uzumaki had been kind to her whenever she'd been caught tailing him under her king's orders. The Gremory era simply nodded to her and assured, Don't worry, Konako. I will. He proved he has abilities we could use in his fight, and Uzumaki-kun's presence would help settle Issei back down after tonight. The rook nodded in acceptance before both she and the Busta woman resumed watching the scene play out. You, Issei growled out with such complete venom that it took Rias completely by surprise. You did this, he accused of the fallen angel as the man landed on the ground. The crow gave a sinister grin in response as he picked his fedora up off the ground, dusted it off with his hand, and put it back on his head. Yes, he responded without remorse. I killed that devil lover, and you're next. The fallen angel then created another spear of light and prepared to throw it at the unmoving, still kneeling, Issei, and Rias called to her knight, Kiba. Right, he acknowledged the order as he summoned one of his blades through using his own sacred gear, sword birth, and prepared to intervene should Issei be unable to protect himself. Without needing to be told, Akeno summoned a few bolts of her lightning in her hand as she let out her customary, Era, Era. Just as the fallen angel made to throw his spear at the still pawn, Rias felt a power surge come from the newest member of her peerage. She let out a sigh in relief before growing a small smile as the power from the brown-haired boy's sacred gear caused the thrown spear of light to veer off course for his heart and instead just barely sliced into his right arm. Before Rias even needed to order and the crow could even react to what had just happened, Akeno, Kiba, and Konako were on the move. Akeno served her role as queen well as she shot off a warning shot of her lightning at the man which caused him to jump back to avoid it, only to feel the cold steel of one of Kiba's blades touching the center of his back before he could even move again. Konako, knowing well what her role as rook was, jumped in front of Issei and took a defensive stance while Ria slowly walked out from the shadows and stared at the fallen angel with an unreadable look on her face. "Don't make another move, fallen angel-san," Ria spoke first with authority. "Kei Konako-chan, Yuoto, Akeno-senpai, and Ria-senpai." Issei realized with his eyes wide in shock. "What are you?" He was cut off as his eyes rolled back into his head and he fell over. Konako caught him and gently laid the unconscious boy on the ground as flashes of red disappeared from his left arm. A small grin made its way onto the heiress' face as she thought, "So I was right, but the trauma from what he's just experienced was simply too much for his mind to take in all at once. He'll need to be healed tonight." "I see," the winged man realized after shaking himself from his shocked stupor at seeing the group appear almost instantaneously. "That hair of yours. You're from the Gremory family, aren't you?" "I am Rias Gremory," she stated for him, "and if I were you I wouldn't make any sudden movements, fallen angel-san." "I admit I had no idea that this was the Gremory heiress jurisdiction," the man revealed while keeping his hands open and out to the side. "I'm guessing that the devil over there is one of yours." "Indeed he is," Rias told him, "and I will show no mercy towards you if you should come after him again." "Well, it seems I must apologize for thinking he was a stray," the fallen angel spoke with hardly any regret present in his voice at all. "However, I would recommend you keep a tighter leash on your servant's collar, or else someone like me might just spot him and decide to go on a little devil hunt." "I appreciate the helpful advice," she returned with just as much false politeness as her verbal sparring partner. "But allow me to issue you a warning as well, should you or your ilk ever attempt something like this, it will be the last mistake you ever make," she promised with a look that could have cut glass from its sharpness. "The same to you, Gremory," he returned before slowly walking away from Kiba's blade, using his wings to fly off, and disappear into the night while dispelling his minimal barrier. "My name is Donazik," he warned them all. "Pray we never meet again, devils." Rias paid no heed to the warning of such a mediocre crow and instead turned towards her rook and called, "Konako, how is Issei?" "Out cold," the white-haired girl responded. "Scratches only visible wound. But Uzumaki-kun's death would hurt him more than any weapon of light could," Kiba spoke in. "Aside from Motohama-kun and Matsuda-kun, Uzumaki-kun is Issei-kun's closest friend." "Indeed," the crimson-haired girl agreed. She then turned to her queen and asked of her, "Akeno, is Uzumaki-kun truly deceased?" "Not yet," the dark-haired beauty answered, "but he will be very soon if he isn't healed immediately. Luckily, he wasn't a devil when he got stabbed, or else he'd already be gone." "Will you save Uzumaki-senpai?" Konako asked as the Gremory heiress walked over and joined her queen in standing over the nearly deceased form of Naruto Uzumaki. "I will," she told them all, much to all of their relief. Konako even let out the breath she'd been holding. "However, I want you, Akeno, to take Issei home and heal him overnight. When he wakes up, I want you to explain to him how he's now a devil and is a member of my peerage, just like you. I leave it up to you how you explain it, but don't physically scar my newest servant." "Ara, Akeno let out a few of her prim giggles. "So mental scarring is okay, Baku. Like I said, I leave it up to you. Just don't turn him gay, though." I don't think that's physically possible, Baku," Kiba intoned nervously. "Hentai," the smallest of them all agreed. Ara, The raven-haired beauty continued to giggle as she collected Issei in her arms and extended both of her devil wings. "Come along, Issei-kun. Akeno-senpai has lots of instructing to do." She then flew off while Rias felt a small shiver travel down her back as she suddenly got a bad feeling that decision wasn't going to go over well. She quickly shook herself of those thoughts, however, as there were more important things to do at the moment. The Gremory heiress then kneeled down and looked at the face of the blonde second year. "I've always wondered if those were just tattoos," she thought before reaching one of her hands down and tracing one of the whisker-like markings on his cheeks. "Well, I'll be," she thought in awe, "they're not tattoos." For the past 4 months she'd kept tabs on the boy who'd been personally sponsored by her elder brother at Kua Academy. Surtsk's Norgraphia had been forthcoming with answers as to why Naruto had gained the Mu's attention, and the lack of answers had only intrigued her even more. Rias had asked Kiba to try and get close to Naruto when the new term had begun, but the unknown blonde had wisely decided to keep the knight at a distance and instead decided to befriend Issei. Kiba had revealed that Naruto had the walk and situational awareness of a warrior who'd seen around as much battle as his own sensei, and that was truly saying something if it was true. The only real information that Rias had been able to gather about the enigmatic blonde was only what it seemed he was willing to allow her to see, which frustrated her to no end. He was not only smart when it comes to his classes, but he was truly intelligent and ingenious in his methodology whenever he detected and decided to lose the tale she'd placed on him 2 months back. While Rias Batfamiliar wasn't as intelligent as, say, a sprite dragon, her familiar was not unintelligent herself. For a single human without even the smallest hint of either innate magic or even a sacred gear to not only realize he was being followed by an invisible bat but also to lose them at will was a feat Rias couldn't even believe with her own eyes. Shaking her head of those musings, Rias pulled out her Devil's Devious Network, or DDN, device and pointed it at the bleeding blonde teen. Since she'd gotten no feelings at all from him when she'd extended her aura to examine him to see just what the cost would be for him, she was forced to do things the old-fashioned way. The crimson-haired heiress then pressed a few buttons on the display screen and awaited the device to finish its scan and calculate the exact value of Naruto in terms of evil pieces. Huh. Rias was dumbfounded as the device showed in bold red letters, "Error. Hunk of junk must be broken," she mumbled tersely as she then put it away into a magic circle. "I guess it's guess and check then. I really hate this method though." "We'll start with the knight," she told the unhearing blonde on the ground. "You proved you're already quite quick, Naruto, so I suppose that a knight's speed would make you just as if not even faster than Kiba." The heiress then took out a horse-headed, red glass chess piece and placed it on top of the boy's chest right above his heart. She then summoned all of her magic and demonic power forward in order to create the appropriate magic circle. A large, red magic circle appeared above Naruto's prone body and Rias began the appropriate chant to make Naruto into a reincarnated devil. "I, Rias Gremory, do hereby order you in my name, heed my call, Naruto Uzumaki. Tie your soul to this world and become a devil of my house. You shall become my knight, and rejoice in your new life." However, when she opened her eyes and looked down, Rias was positively flabbergasted to discover that literally nothing had changed from when before she'd begun the chant. The magic circle still remained circling above the semi-dead teen and the evil piece hadn't even reacted to the ritual at all. It was as if she'd just tried to turn a stone into her knight. Was that supposed to happen, Baku? Kiba asked nervously. "Trouble?" Konako queried. "At the very least there should have been something," Rias grumbled to herself as she tuned out her 2 present servants. "A sign of rejection, not enough value in the piece, something. I've never even heard of this complete lack of the reaction before. Maybe the rook will work instead? It is worth 2 more in value than the knight. It should at least be worth a try." The heiress then took out her red rook piece and exchanged its place with the knight piece. Rias followed that action by repeating the process with the rook, but was rewarded with another no reaction. "Bishop," she tried. "Nothing." Knight and bishop. Nothing again. Knight and rook. Nothing once more. Bishop and rook. Nada. Knight, bishop, and rook. Zippo. What is wrong with you? She shrieked in frustration at the oblivious blonde while she let out a few pants from the exertion trying to do what she'd just attempted did to her energy reserves. Evil pieces were made to reincarnate anything from this dimension into a devil. Humans, yokai, dragons, it doesn't matter. So long as it lives, the evil pieces can work on it. And I got mine from Beelzebub Sama himself. Ugh. If only I'd had another mutation piece besides Gasper's. She then stopped cold and blinked dumbly as her last statement finally registered in her mind and it caused her to remember something. Oh, wait. I do have another one. She then reached into her uniform's pocket and pulled out an evil piece she'd only received 2 weeks ago. Surtsks had assured her that it would serve its purpose in reincarnating someone, but since it had the same reaction to Issei that all her current pieces had just had to Naruto, she'd assumed that it was just a faulty piece. Maybe you're supposed to work here, she spoke to the piece. It's not like anything else is working here. An unspoken rule about the evil piece system was that each evil piece looked exactly like the chess pieces that the system based off of. The pawns looked like the pawn, the bishops looked like the bishop, and so on and so forth. Even the standard mutation pieces like the chess piece they were originally based off of before they absorbed the powers of other pieces. This one, however, didn't resemble any known chess piece at all. It had an odd swirl fashion outer armor that coiled up the piece's 3-inch length until it reached the peak, where two horn-like protrusions extended out perpendicular to one another. While Rias had no idea as to what she was supposed to claim this piece as, she somehow felt like there was some kind of connection between the piece she held and the blonde on the ground now that she focused on the piece. Well, let's see if this works, she mused aloud. The Gremory heiress then placed the unnamed piece onto the blonde's chest over his heart and chanted, I, Rias Gremory, do hereby command you in my name, heed my call, Naruto Uzumaki. Tie your soul to this world and become a devil of my house. You shall become my devil and rejoice in your new life. A small tug of her lips' corners was the only outward sign that Rias was in fact pleased by the sight as she watched the unique piece glow brightly in response to her call. The slowly spinning magic circle then began to descend towards the whiskered teen and continued on through his body until it ceased its drop once it reached the concrete below him. To signal the end of the ceremony, the unique piece flashed brightly once and then sank into the blonde's chest and bonded with his very DNA. An exhausted sigh came from the crimson-haired beauty as she let her arms fall down to her side. She then called to Konako, can you check on him for me, please? I'm too exhausted to trust my senses right now. Hi, Bakuo, Konako answered her. The rook then walked over to Naruto and kneeled down at his side. She gave him a cursory once-over with her heightened senses and innate Nikomata abilities before checking his vitals with her fingers and saying, alive. He'll make it. What a relief, Rias spoke as she let out a thankful breath. But the wound isn't healing. What did you say, Konako? Kiba asked of the youngest in the group before their master could. Funny feeling from it, the cat-like girl explained briefly while pointing at the open wood. Will need healing as well. It could just be his body's reaction to the residual light particles left from that spear, the blonde swordsman offered a possible explanation. Konako merely shook her head and repeated, funny feeling. Not from fallen angel. Not sure from where. Wasn't there before ritual though. While you could be right, Kiba, Rias chimed in before the two could continue, I'd rather not take the chance. The piece I just used on Uzumaki-kun here was a unique piece Uni-Isama gave me 2 weeks ago through Graphia. I never got any explanation of it out of her though, so we don't know how the piece will react to his body. It would most likely be safest if I take him home and heal his wounds overnight. But Bakuo, I appreciate your concern, Kiba, she stopped him before he could offer his protest with a small smile on her face. Really, I do. However, me staying with Uzumaki-kun is not just so I can heal his body. It lets me be the first person he sees in the morning so that I can answer any immediately concerning questions he no doubt will have. In cases of unknowing reincarnation, like both Issei and Uzumaki-kun are, it is better for the master or someone the master trusts absolutely to explain their situation to them in order to prevent them from drawing incorrect conclusions. Now then, she then directed to her two servants. You two go on home and get some sleep. I'll contact you tomorrow after Akeno and I have spoken about what will have happened tomorrow morning and decide on an action to take. Hi, Bakuo, Kiba accepted reluctantly while Konako merely gave the king a nod in response. The pair of devils then each summoned a magic circle and teleported onto their individual homes. Now for you, Rias turned towards the steadily breathing almost corpse. She then started digging around in his pants and jacket for some kind of identity so she could find an address since she'd never been able to find his actual living address before, not even Sana's records had one. Aha, she exclaimed victoriously after finding his ID card deep in his pants left pocket. Now, to get you home and healed up. Focusing on the address on the ID, she summoned a teleportation magic circle and the two devils disappeared from the park, with only a puddle of blood reflecting the moon's pale glow as a sign that anything had occurred that night at all. Rias didn't notice the faint outline of red that covered Naruto's wound's inner walls. The sound of water droplets dripping into an even larger pool of liquid echoed off the humongous chamber's solid walls. A single drop fell from the room ceiling and splattered over Naruto's whiskered left cheek, making his face twitch in reaction. His cerulean eyes then slowly creaked open and both orbs sent to his mind his current location. About time you wake, a deep, powerful, booming voice rumbled from seemingly all around him. You're lucky I'm so patient with you, kid. The spiky-haired blonde then sat up slowly while letting out a tired moan and rubbing at his eyes. Kurama, he asked into the darkness. That you, buddy? It is I. Kurama's voice echoed in answer. Then I guess I'm in my mindscape again, he mused as he made his way to his sandaled feet. How long has it been since I've been here, he asked nobody while looking at his surroundings with a critical eye. Really need to fix this place up. It is your mind, Naruto, the mountainous fox reminded him. This is a physical representation of how your mind is, and it is adequately a sewer. Doesn't mean I don't want to try, the whiskered teen replied with his traditional toothy grin. But what am I here for, he queried as he turned towards the unlocked and open seal and began to trudge through the ankle-deep water towards his friend. I mean, not that it isn't great to see you and all, Kurama, but you told me you didn't want to risk it with my chakra system closed off. You died, Kurama stated flatly with a lazy flick of one of his tree-sized tails, causing Naruto to freeze stiff at this information. Or rather, it would be more precise to say you nearly met the Shinigami, but were instead recreated. The former shinobi took down an audible gulp before asking hesitantly, so it really wasn't a dream then? I really did. Yes, his friend's booming voice confirmed before he opened one of his blood-red irises and let out a monstrous yawn. You really did do battle with a man that had a crow's wings and he did defeat you. Only because he played possum and went after a defenseless Issei, Naruto pointed out. Indeed, the fox conceded. However, that doesn't change the fact of what really occurred. Naruto, you were willing to give your life to save your friends, but tell me, did you ever stop to think about what that would mean for us? The Kyuubi roared in anger while his tails flailed about behind him. What do ya mean? Kurama took in a calming breath before continuing in a much calmer tone, Naruto, we are not from this world. Which most likely means that there would be no afterlife for us. Naruto's tanned face paled while his friend kept on going, what I mean is this, had you truly ended up dead, the two of us would have most likely just ceased to exist altogether. No seeing our friends and family. Just gone. Now, even though you have been unable to physically use chakra, yours and my chakra systems are still intertwined. That means, again, that your chakra system will give you both my vitality and constitution, which would make you practically immune to the aging effects all humans have to deal with eventually. Ever since we regained and combined both halves of my spirit and chakra from that pestering Shinigami, my chakra's potency has skyrocketed, which has made you on par with Jiji when you go all out, Toad Senjutsu plus me and your skills. So, tell me why in all the hells did you take that spear to the gut? The kitsune roared so loud that the secret chamber shook from its strength. I wasn't gonna let Issei die when I could have saved him, Naruto answered steadily, his face unflinching in front of the walking natural disaster. Your fiancé was right, Kurama reminded him with anger, making a brief flash of hurt cross the blonde's face at the memory of his old love. You truly are a dolt. There were observers to your battle with that fallen angel, Naruto. The cerulean-eyed boy blinked dumbly in shock as he lamely asked in response to that bit of news, huh? There were 4 others watching your idiotic actions, the fox informed him. All of them had a similar aura to your friends. I'm guessing that Crowman's term stray devil applies. 2 of them were familiar to me, that cat-like girl. Konako-chan, Uzumaki intoned. And that blonde with the curse of fang girls, the orange giant finished, unperturbed by the interruption. That'd be Kibayuto, Naruto told his friend. You know, it isn't really that hard to remember their names, Kurama. What do I care? He sniffed derisively in response to the blonde's point. I'm not the one speaking with them. What about the other 2? The whiskered shinobi asked. You said that there were 4 observers. Kiba and Konako only make 2. The other 2 I didn't recognize, but I do know I felt their presences at your school before, Kurama answered. Both of their auras made me believe they are much more powerful than that fallen angel or any of the other supposed stray devils. To make it so you could understand, those 2 were Jounin compared to the Genin to Chuyunin rank of the others. So they'd be the leaders of this group of stray devils, then. Naruto figured aloud. That'd be my guess, the orange fox confirmed. So what you're saying is I shouldn't have gotten in that fight at all, the blonde guessed at what his friend's point was for all this. No, the giant Biju denied, making the shinobi blink in confusion at this turn of events. Those 4 presences didn't arrive until after you engaged that crow man. What I'm saying is that you needn't have taken that spear to the stomach. My guess is that, even if Issei wasn't aware of it, he now belongs to this group of stray devils and they came to assist him against that fallen angel. It is plainly obvious that the Jiraiya reincarnation doesn't have a clue on how to defend himself in real combat. That's true, Naruto chuckled while smiling as he remembered his time with his godfather. He then stopped once he realized something and shouted, you said someone recreated me. 17 and you're still that slow how? Kurama asked rhetorically with a small shake of his huge head, making the blonde grumble under his breath at the jab. Yes, someone did do something to your body, Naruto. What? He screamed as he began to panic as he recalled all the torturous experiences his former sensei had gotten the 2 of them into on their training trip. His mind continued to come up with worse and worse possibilities as he continued to shriek, oh my god, what did they do? What did they do? Am I still me? Am I still a boy? Be silent, Naruto, the giant ordered in a bellow that made the panicky blonde cease his sprinting around. Now, from what I can tell, very little, if any, alterations have been made to your physical form. Oh, thank heaven, he breathed out in relief, only to get a sharp pain in his head. Ow! What the hell was that for? He demanded of his friend. I didn't do anything to you, the kitsune denied with a slight wince as well. All I can tell you is that it came from outside. Then why the hell do I feel like BAHN just kicked me upside the head? How should I know? Isn't it kind of your job to know everything? Naruto quipped. Hardly, Kurama told him lazily as he returned to laying on his haunches while his tails curled about his body. I don't really know anything about this world. The only thing I can tell you, though, is that something happened last night after you blacked out and that the inner workings of your body are different from before. How so? He asked with a serious look on his face. Ero-sennin always told me to take care of my body and to know it inside and out. I'm not entirely certain, the orange-furred Biju answered him. There seem to be a few modifications to your chakra network. From what I can tell, all 8 gates seem to be open now. Naruto's eyes suddenly went wide from the shock caused by hearing this, but there also doesn't appear to be any negative effects on your body from this development. Also, possibly because of the gates being open perpetually, your chakra network is flowing much stronger and faster than before. Wow, the blue-eyed teen breathed out in wonder as he began to feel overwhelmed from hearing that piece of news. So I'm gonna be a walking, talking middle finger to Bushy Brows and Bushy Brow Sensei's ultimate kinjutsu? Sweet. He thought with a grin on his face. So what does all that mean, Kurama? I would think that it means all of your chakra-based abilities will need to be relearned due to how potent your chakra has suddenly become, he replied. Should you attempt to raise Nan as you are now, you'd end up blowing your arm clean off from the shoulder down. Sweet, the shinobi grinned his Vulpin smile. He then thought about that and frowned before asking, so I'm guessing that means I'm gonna need to learn the basics again, doesn't it? Kurama's toothy, foxy grin was all the answer he needed. Crap. Naruto groaned. I hated tree walking. And there's not even any trees that I can practice on. Then I would recommend only using your taijutsu for now, Kurama advised. While I don't doubt your speed and strength have wildly increased, they should be easy for you to adjust to. A week at most, I think. Using some of your father's seals would no doubt help to contain this new physical prowess as well. Naruto rolled his eyes in an exasperated fashion before reminding Kurama, even if they could, all my stuff from back in Konoha is sealed away, and, since you seem to have forgotten, I can't access any of it without being able to use chakra on the Fuinjutsu. One of the Biju's mighty, human-like hands then came up and smacked his face at hearing Naruto's reminder. How can one single human be this dense, he mumbled while running his hand down his snout. You're an imbecile, Naruto, he berated, making Naruto let out an indignant oi. And I really can't believe I've got to spell this out when I practically told you already, but here we go. Your tenketsu are all open now. The silence that followed that revelation was practically deafening in the chamber. Naruto was stuck standing there stock still while the eerie drip of water into the pool at his feet echoed. The blonde's eyes were as large as aquamarine dinner plates and his mouth opened and closed periodically without uttering any coherent words for a few minutes. You mean, I can use chakra again, the shinobi finally managed to piece together in a scream of disbelief. Indeed, you utterly dense buffoon, Kurama confirmed lazily. I'm starting to think this world's science is right about humans being closely related to chimps. You're certainly as idiotic as that damned monkey Son Goku. Naruto raised his right arm over his eyes in order to prevent the early morning sun's rays from blinding his sleep-addled retinas. In an attempt to retreat, he attempted to completely turn his body away from the window and onto his stomach, but found he couldn't due to something keeping his left side still. Now realizing that there was a source of warmth to his left, Naruto opened his eyes and turned his head that way. Whatever was the cause of the heat was clutching onto his left arm tightly and refused to let him go no matter how much he attempted to gently remove his appendage from underneath the orange comforter. Slightly shifting in the bed, a single lock of a unique shade of hair poked out from beneath the sheets. Not registering the color but now curious as to whom his apparent bed sharer was, Naruto then reached across his body with his free hand, gripped the edge of the bed sheet, and pulled it down just enough to reveal the heat source's hair and face. The teenaged blonde sucked in a sharp breath and his mind completely awoke while simultaneously freezing at the same moment that he was able to place a name to that beautiful face, Rias Gremory. A few strands of a disheveled, bed-headed mane of crimson fell around her stunning heart-shaped face and framed the sleeping beauty's face wonderfully as a few rays from the morning sun shone upon her slightly parted lips as they slowly breathed in and out in her rest. My God, she's an angel. He couldn't help but think before wincing as another headache suddenly made itself known to him. After being able to shake the pain off, the blonde then somehow managed to tear his gaze away from the sight of perfection on his left and stared directly upwards at the off-white ceiling of his bedroom above him. "Kurama," he then called to his tenant, "did the two of us?" "Not that I know," the bijou answered him. The blue-eyed teen then peeked under the portion of the covers covering him, and it became glaringly obvious that his body was certainly pleased with his bedmate's presence. "Well, I'm naked," he made known while somehow not freaking out. The former shinobi then briefly glanced over towards his left and he thought aloud, "Did she?" "No, we didn't," a voice he didn't recognize came from his left, making him blink in surprise since he hadn't felt her shift at all on the bed. "In case you're wondering, I didn't steal your virginity, Uzumaki-kun, though some do tend to think that we still do that." Not really knowing how else to react, he turned towards the now smirking and very naked, now that he got a good look at her and could feel skin on his left arm, woman holding onto his left arm like it was a body pillow, and greeted with a small smile, "Good morning. Did you sleep well? And kinda hard to steal something that doesn't exist anymore." "Good morning to you, too," the crimson-haired goddess returned with a warm smile on her face, "and I did once I finished your healing. Also, so many girls will be disheartened to hear that, Uzumaki-kun," she finished while flashing him a playful smirk. "Just Naruto is fine," he insisted. "I mean, if we've shared a bed together naked, I think we can call each other by our first names. Don't you agree, Rias-chan?" he finished with a foxy grin stretching his whiskered cheeks. The gorgeous woman grew a dangerous grin before she leaned her head over and whispered directly into his ear, "I suppose so, Naruto-kun." Good heavens! He thought with wide eyes as a shiver traveled down his spine. Are you absolutely certain we didn't do it?" he hurriedly asked. "Not while I was awake," she answered him. "Hold on a minute while I check." Rias then let go of his arm and turned her body to where she was facing away from him, only now her very fine rear end was being pushed directly into Naruto's leg. "Holy shit!" the blonde youth mentally screamed as he began to feel exceptionally flustered now. Not even Sakura's was. "We didn't," the young woman assured him while tossing the slightly red-faced teen a smirk over her shoulder. She then pushed herself up off of the mattress and sat up while stretching her arms over her head and arching her back like a cat, all the meanwhile unashamedly granting Naruto a perfect view of her assets. The whiskered teen quickly turned his body onto its right side and curled his legs in a vain hope of hiding his little friend down below. He then shut his eyes tight while a single thought made itself known in his head after seeing that perfect pair of breasts, "Mama." By Jiji's horns, Kurama spoke up in awe. "This woman is even more brazen than I thought possible in this world. I never thought a human," the voice in Naruto's head then cut off suddenly, making the shinobi wonder as to why. "Kurama," he called to his friend. "You okay there, buddy? I know she's got an amazing pair on her and all that might have actually made even Anko jealous, but I never thought it'd affect you." "Stupid." The fox howled in his head, making Naruto grimace at the volume. "I can't believe I didn't recognize it. Naruto, look, she's..." "Are you alright, Naruto-kun?" Rias asked from her position on the bed that hadn't shifted in the slightest since he'd assumed the fetal position. "No doubt you have many questions you wish to ask. Now is the time. Don't you wanna take a shower and freshen up first?" he offered while refusing to turn his head for fear of being caught staring. He'd seen what Tsunade did to Jiraiya every time she'd caught the old pervert gawking, and had no desire to even take that risk. I can make breakfast if you want." "Pancakes sound fine." "That does sound delicious, but I've never been one to procrastinate." She shot down his attempt to buy time to regain his composure and control his other brain. "I can take a shower at the clubhouse after we make it to school, as I don't think you have a ladies' bathroom necessities." "Shit. How can I turn this situation around?" he thought in a panic. The blonde then added on, And why do I suddenly feel like I'm in one of Erosenen's books all of a sudden? Come now, Rias chided politely, and Naruto could just sense that she was looking at him with a victorious grin and with her hands on her hips. School is in a few hours, Naruto-kun. We don't have all day to do this, you know. Get dressed, he mumbled as a request. Why? Can't focus. The crimson-haired beauty let out a melodious laugh at his childish-sounding reply, causing his cheeks to burn while he hid them from her sight. Okay, she conceded to him, making him let out a sigh in relief. The young woman let out a few more chuckles at his expense, making the embarrassed boy pout. Can you hand me my underwear then? I left them on the bedside table next to you. Shutting his cerulean eyes tight and willing himself to not think about just what kind of underwear she'd wear, Naruto blindly reached his hand out towards his nightstand and began the search for the appropriate garments. After a few minutes of fumbling around, knocking over and hearing objects break on the floor, grumbling curses under his breath, and bearing Rias' laughter at him, his lone hand enclosed over a pair of silky fabric pieces of cloth that he was able to recognize as a woman's bra and panties. He immediately shot his hand above his torso and waited for his still laughing bedmate to take her underwear and put it on. A still chuckling young beauty took her clothes from the stiff blonde with a smile he just knew was on her face based on past experience. While he may not be a virgin anymore, he'd never been able to get comfortable with being in the same bed as someone he'd not remembered climbing into with in the first place. Anko-sensei's greatest disappointment in that department, Naruto recalled sadly with a small frown. The sound of fabric rustling behind him preceded Rias finally telling him the words he wanted to hear, but would never want to hear if the situation happened to be different. Okay, I'm not nude anymore, Naruto-kun. It is safe to look. You'll have to forgive me if I sound skeptical, he grumbled back, making her chuckle once more. I've seen what the kendo club does to Issei when they catch him. Damn you, Erosenin. He mentally screamed as he just couldn't help but picture his godfather's grinning face. Now I won't ever be able to look at Rias-chan without picturing her naked. Try as hard as Sakura had, not even her strength could rid Naruto of corruption that ran that deep. Regardless, we're burning daylight, Rias insisted. You have questions to ask, and I have answers to give. To start with, all you experienced last night was, in fact, real. I already know, Naruto responded steadily while still remaining cradled, still refusing to look at the now barely clothed beauty in his bed for fear of retribution. Well, you're not in denial then, the youthful girl noted out loud. Good. That takes care of the hardest part of finding out you're now one of my servant devils. The whiskered blonde cerulean eyes blinked dumbly in response as he was stunned from her words. Come again, he asked after a brief moment of silence. I said that it was good you weren't in denial, since that's the hardest part, she replied with a hint of amusement in her tone. No, he told her, finally managing to sit up in the bed before turning around and creating and maintaining direct eye-to-eye contact. His own blue eyes stared right into her amused azure pair and he queried with a curious edge, that last part. The corner of the crimson-haired woman's mouth twitched upwards and she repeated for him, you're now a devil, Naruto Uzumaki. A reincarnated devil belonging to my house. I thought that was what you said, he responded to her statement with a small nod. The former Hokage heir apparent took in a deep, steadying breath to hold in his temper at her words as he felt a feeling of rage begin to build up. Calm down, Naruto, he told himself. You don't have all the information yet. Let's not jump to conclusions here. Why don't we continue this in the living room, Rias-chan? Neither of us are dressed for a reality-shattering conversation, and I usually make it a point to never make any stupid decisions until after I've had my morning shower. What a coincidence, she replied with a grin, so do I. Then you won't mind waiting a little bit while I clean myself up from last night? Not at all, she told him with a small smile. The devil girl then climbed off of the bed and collected her clothing. I'll be waiting, Naruto-kun, she told him with a teasing smile as she left his bedroom with a sway in her step. The shinobi let out a sigh as he then climbed out of his bed with him absently thinking, now I'm gonna need to wash my sheets again. He then went over and into his bedroom attached bathroom, climbed in the shower after grabbing a fresh towel, turned the shower up to its hottest setting, and began to go through his morning routine like always. Naruto, Kurama called to him. Yeah, he returned. What I was about to say before that Rias girl interrupted was this, she was there last night. I'm guessing that she was one of the two presences you couldn't place a face to, Naruto provided as he squeezed his nearly empty shampoo bottle into his hand before running the hair care product through his naturally spiky locks. Indeed, the fox confirmed for him. And if I'm right, then she's the strongest out of that entire group of devils. The blonde let out a breath as he simply stood under the shower head and allowed the hot water to run down his body while he kept his eyes closed. Then she may not be lying, after all, he figured. Most likely, Issei had a similar moment a few days ago on his date and she saved him the same way she apparently did me. By making you both into her servants as devils, Kurama concluded. Let's check my body and see if there's anything aside from what you already told me about that seems out of place, Naruto suggested. Since you're technically a part of my chakra network now, can you run a diagnostic for me? Already am, the Biju informed him. Aside from what I could find last night while you were semi-dead, I see two major differences in your body now. Okay, the whiskered teen replied as he turned off his shower and was temporarily blinded by the steam as he opened the frosted glass stall. What are they? Well, for one, the inner fox began, this first one seemingly has nothing to do with your chakra circulatory system. This one seems to be a type of natural energy reserve of some kind. Too small for you to store senjutsu chakra with, though. I'd heard rumors of devil's magic being studied in the occult research club before, the shinobi offered a potential explanation as he dried his hair with his blue towel, which, now that I think about it, Rias-chan is the club buckhook. Maybe it's supposed to be my reservoir for magic power as a devil? Probable, the Biju told him, and that explanation makes sense. This other bodily alteration I think you can see for yourself. The blonde youth rose an inquisitive eyebrow at his reflection after running his hand down the fogged mirror and he asked aloud, how? Try and focus your mind just below your back's shoulder blades and you'll see. I think we'll both like this addition. Can't hurt, Naruto figured with a shrug. He then did as his friend had instructed and the results of his action made his eyes shoot open in surprise. Holy shit. I've got wings. The odd teen focused his back muscles on attempting to flap his two jet black, bat-like wings once, and the following gust of wind caused numerous objects and effects to fall over and slash or spill in his bathroom. He then reached out one of his hands and ran it down the new appendage's length, noting that it felt rather leathery. Oi, Kurama. Yes. Did that manual in my instincts tell you how to get rid of these things? I mean, they're cool and all, but I think showing up at school with my wings out would probably freak quite a few people out. Naruto could picture his foxy friend rolling his eyes in response while the Biju told him, just do what you did to get them out, but in the reverse. That should do it. It did, the teenaged, newly reincarnated devil told his friend once he'd successfully hidden his wings once more. And you were right, flying does seem pretty cool, Kurama. Ha! The Biju exclaimed from within his head, suddenly sounding quite pleased for some reason. Take that, Kome, you insignificant beetle, you. Now you're not the only one of us who can fly. A large sweat drop made its way down the back of Naruto's blonde head as he slid on his pair of clean, orange boxers and began to get dressed for the day while deciding against reminding Kurama that it was his body with the wings, not the Biju's. As he finished sliding on his school uniform and threw his blazer over his shoulder, a delicious-smelling aroma made its way into his room and wafted into his nose. There you are, Rias greeted him from her place behind the electric stove his apartment came furnished with once he exited his bedroom. She was now, thankfully, or not, depending on how you thought about it, completely dressed in her Kua Academy uniform. I hope you don't mind, but you were taking too long and your idea for pancakes was a good one. It's not a problem, he responded unsteadily, a little stunned to see this development. He then explained, I was just doing a lot of thinking while I was in the shower. Can't say I blame you, the crimson-haired lady agreed with a small hum. Want a few? She asked while gesturing towards the stack of 5 perfectly golden brown flapjacks. Sure, he uncertainly answered with a shaky nod. Well, this certainly isn't what I expected to see, he thought as the azure-eyed girl set a pair of pancakes on a plate for him. Not to be rude or anything, but didn't you just say in the bed that you were my supposed master? Not supposed, but I did say that, she confirmed with a nod as she set his plate, complete with a butter square and silverware, at one end of his 6-person, rectangular dining table. Rias then took her own seat at the opposite end of the table that his plate was set at before gesturing to his offered plate and imploring, sit. Eat. I promise I didn't poison it, and here's the proof. She then took a bit of one of her own pancakes with an amused smile on her face directed his way. That's not what has me confused, he murmured while taking his seat opposite his apparent, and confusing, master. So. You're a devil, he started lamely as he began to slice his 2 flapjacks with his fork. I am, the young woman nodded as she raised another square of perfectly done dough, and so are you now. So what conclusions did your thinking come to? She probed politely before placing her occupied utensil into her delicate mouth. Naruto then started explaining to her about just what he and Kurama had concluded from everything they'd seen, discovered, and experienced. He was careful to leave out any mention of his inner tenant and his ability of chakra, but, judging from the appraising look his apparent master was giving him, she seemed both pleased and impressed at his deductions. And then I thought, hey, maybe I've got wings too. So I just focused a bit, and what do I know? Wings, Naruto finished as he shoved another square of pancake into his mouth. This is really good. For the most part, you are correct, Naruto-kun, Rias congratulated him before dabbing at her mouth with a napkin like a prim lady. Issei-kun died on his date with that Yuma, who was, indeed a fallen angel in disguise. I must admit to being curious though, how were you unaffected by Yuma's spell for everyone to forget her? She's rather observant, Kurama commented. Yeah, she is, he agreed. I'm different than most people, Naruto offered. To be completely honest, I've never really dealt with legitimate magic before, so I'm not entirely certain how I was immune to her spell. Immune? She picked up his slip with a curious look on her face. Shit. I felt the spell be cast, but it didn't affect me. Why not? Not so fast, the blonde told her with a Vulpin smirk stretching his face. I think that it's my turn to ask a few questions, Rias-chan. I suppose, the devil woman conceded with a small downturn of her lips. Ask away. She knows you're deliberately avoiding answering anything about your potential abilities, Naruto, the Biju commented to him. I doubt this topic is truly done. I do as well, he agreed silently. So you're mine and Issei's, master, is that right? Her nod was all the answer he needed before asking her, so then why did I wake up with you in my bed, naked, if we didn't do the deed? To heal you, of course, Rias answered immediately. Light particles from weapons of light, like that fallen angel's spear last night, are a devil's greatest weakness, and even a small slash can cause great harm if not treated. One of my other servants noticed that there was a funny feeling coming from your wound. Naturally, a few of us thought that it was leftover light particles in your bloodstream from when you'd been stabbed earlier. The best healing spell I know is one where I have to directly insert my devil's aura into you in order to sufficiently heal any and all wounds. And you were naked because, he prompted further explanation. The young woman's azure eyes rolled as she explained, the spell requires direct, skin-to-skin contact in order for it to work. I was admittedly tired after reincarnating you into a devil, so I wanted to finish healing you as fast as possible, which oddly didn't take nearly as long as I thought it would. The more skin contact, the more efficient the healing. So we were both in our birthday suits because you were healing me, he concluded with a skeptical eye sent her way. Yes, she told him with a direct stare. Naruto held the direct eye contact for a few moments before shrugging his shoulders and saying, works for me. Now, if you don't mind me asking, why didn't you intervene last night until after I'd gotten stabbed? Rias gave him a crooked smirk in response, like she'd been expecting him to ask her that, before telling him, why, I do believe it is time we begin making our way to school, Naruto-kun. We don't want to be late for first period, now do we? She's giving it right back to me, the shinobi realized quickly with a small frown tugging at his lips. Fine. I'll see how this thing goes for a little while before I decide if I want to stay on with her as her servant or leave and go on my own way. This world is pretty big, after all. Very well, he conceded verbally with a small inclination of the head. He then stood from his chair and finished, we wouldn't want to be late for school, after all. Well, here we are, Naruto extended his arm to his master as the pair came within sight of Kyoa Academy. A delicate, crimson eyebrow rose at his action and Rias then asked him, and just what might that be for? Well, the blonde began to explain, the fact that I am about to be seen walking onto campus with one of the two great Oni-sama of Kyoa Academy might be it. The rumor mill will, of course, go insane and blow this out of the water, so I say we act the part just this once and really screw with the gossips. A few delighted chuckles escaped from the crimson-haired beauty's throat at hearing his latest idea for a prank. Okay, she agreed before she wrapped one of her arms in his offered one, but only just this once to mess with everyone. No lying about what didn't happen last night. I will make it my first official order if I must. I would never lie about taking a maiden's chastity, Naruto assured her in an overly dramatic, gentlemanly fashion. I doubt even Issei would ever sink that low, and if he would then I must beat it out of him. Disciplining the servant's behavior is the master's job, Naruto-kun, she reminded him with a small, pleased smile. Then count it as a dispute between friends if you must, he insisted. Before Rias could return fire and continue their playful back and forth banter, the two both heard from behind them, Aira. Aren't you two getting along just fine, Bucko? The two with the linked arms turned together and witnessed a slightly panicked Issei following a pleased Akeno Himejima. What in the... Naruto wondered before it clicked in his head. She must be the last presence you picked up, Kurama. She is, Kurama confirmed for him. Akeno, Rias greeted her fellow female with a small inclination of the head. She then turned and spoke directly to Issei, good morning to you, Issei-kun. Issei's frantic golden eyes shot upwards and he quickly looked around, like he was afraid something might come out and bite him or something. When he finally realized just who had greeted him though, the brown-haired boy managed to calm himself down before returning the greeting with an uneasy, forced formal tone, good morning, Gremory-sama. How are you on this fine day? I am fine, she answered him while Naruto couldn't help but suppress a few snickers at how uncomfortable Issei looked right then. The master then turned towards the Yamato Nadeshiko with a raised eyebrow while she assured Issei, you don't need to be so formal when we're amongst ourselves, Issei, only when we're dealing with a differing devil family who directly addresses you. In all other occurrences, it is perfectly okay for you to refer to me as Bucko since you and Naruto-kun will now be joining the Occult Research Club. Thanks, Bucko, Issei expressed with a nervous glance sent Akeno's way that Naruto didn't miss. Akeno, this is Naruto Uzumaki, Rias then introduced the blonde to her. Naruto-kun, this is Akeno Himejima, my most trusted friend and your fellow servant. Nice to meet you, Akeno-san, Naruto offered his greetings first with a respectful inclination of the head. He could already tell that the raven-haired teenage woman had extraordinary power within her just from her aura, though it was an odd mix. "Nice to meet you too, Uzumaki-kun," the Japanese beauty returned with a traditional bow from the hips like a shrine Maiko would. "I look forward to instructing both you and little Issei-kun," she finished, causing Issei to briefly flinch and making Naruto really curious as to why. "Shall we then?" the blonde asked the two graceful ladies. "Rias-chan and I have decided to light the fire of the rumor mill and toss a little gas on it. Would the two of you like to join us?" he requested of the other devils. "Chen." Issei caught onto how Naruto was speaking of the master, causing him to stop and adopt an inquisitive look sent the shinobi's way. "Ara, Akeno giggled primly. "How bold of you, Uzumaki-kun, but I'm certain young Issei-kun wouldn't mind at all if we joined in on your fun." "Huh," the unaware boy blinked dumbly at them all until Akeno suddenly latched herself onto the perverted boy's left arm, making him let out a high-pitched, girlish scream that caused both Naruto and Rias to briefly lose control of their snickers and openly laugh at the shock present on his face. "AK Akeno-senpai," he exclaimed in shock. "SHH," the ponytail-wielding teenaged beauty shushed him by putting a delicate forefinger over his lips and bringing her face close to his, making the youngest male there whimper briefly. Issei stilled and she whispered into his ear just barely loud enough for Naruto to overhear due to his heightened senses, "Just let it happen, Issei-kun. Just stop resisting and let your senpai have her way." "That girl sounds like she's about to rape your friend," Kurama pointed out with a chuckle. "Nah. She's probably harmless, Kurama. Besides, it's not really, technically rape if you actually like it," he quipped to the Biju's words, "and I highly doubt Issei wouldn't enjoy a single moment of it." "Hi, Akeno-senpai," the poor boy relented with a resigned sigh. The dark-haired beauty then raised her unoccupied hand and affectionately patted Issei's cheek while complimenting him, "Good boy, Issei-kun. Your Akeno-senpai will always take care of her cute little Kaoruhei." "Just what did she do to him?" the whiskered blonde whispered to his own partner. "I don't know," Rias answered him in a low voice so as to not be overheard while the group of 4 devils made their way to Kuaha in their pairs. "I only told her to make sure she explained just what happened last night and how he's now a devil, like her. Maybe I should have specified there was to be no training." "Don't worry about it," Naruto dismissed her concerns with a lazy wave of his hand, oblivious of the many people now staring at him and the girl on his arm with slack jaws as they passed the Kuaha front gate. "All he'll need is a good peeping and Issei'll be back to normal before the end of the school day." "I'll have to trust your judgment on that," his master told him. "A few of my other servants had told me about how much of a pervert he is, but can it overcome even a morning's worth of Akeno?" "Without a doubt," he snorted at the notion. "Hell, Ero-sennin would get the tar beat out of him, but be back to normal faster than I could blink if another hot babe happened to be in the hot springs." Issei's a stubborn guy, Rias-chan. Unknown to the pair, numerous people had just let out gasps at hearing how he'd just spoken to her. "And I do mean stubborn. Never underestimate the power of the super pervert's perversion, or you'll end up surprised beyond belief." "You don't know Akeno, though," she pointed out. "And you don't know Issei," he returned with a wry grin sent her way. "Fair point," Rias conceded with a small nod. She then looked around and noticed that they'd since passed through the school's front entrance and now stood in front of the main staircase. "Well, this has been fun, Naruto-kun, but I believe this is where we must part ways. We do have differing classes, after all." "What? No kiss?" he asked with a teasing grin. He then turned around only to see Akeno plant a small kiss on Issei's cheek, making the poor boy go stiff as a board and his face grow a rather dopey-looking grin. "See, even Issei gets one. What do I get from my master as proof she adores her cute little servants?" The crimson-haired beauty grinned up at him before leaning up and whispering in his ear, "You got to see me naked, Naruto-kun, and so long as I don't hear about it, I can't discipline you for telling people about it." "That seems like a fair deal," The blonde agreed while quickly raising his free hand and pinching his nose shut in order to prevent a nosebleed from running. But will it happen again anytime soon? The smirk that went across the devilish woman's face sent shivers down his back as she huskily whispered into his ear, "As often and as many times as I need to." Rias then separated herself from the blonde and began to make her way up the stairs, making the shinobi blush as he watched on, entranced, as her hips swayed from side to side. She then called back over her shoulder with that stupid smirk still on her face, "Someone will come to collect both you and Issei-kun after school is over for you both to meet your fellow club members. I'll see you later, Naruto-kun," she teased before blowing him a kiss and continuing on her way up to the third floor for her classes. My god, she's playing me, the whiskered blonde thought in realization. And the really scary thing is, I don't know if I can keep up with her, or if I even want her to stop. The last time I was defeated so badly was with Anko-sensei after the war, and she even decided to teach me the art afterwards. She even gave me her personal stamp of approval. This is even worse than that Mizugake when you went to Kiri for the slug woman, Kurama reminded him. Yeah, at least there I had the age difference card to play to stop that before anything could happen, but Rias and I are practically the same age. Don't look to me for guidance, the fox cut in before anything could happen. You humans' mating rituals never made much sense to me even when your mother was my Jinhuriki. I'm a devil now, Naruto reminded him with a grin. Not really a human anymore. He then pulled out a number 2 pencil from his bag and tried twirling it in his fingers while beginning to make his way to his first class, only for it to shatter into 1,000 little shards of graphite and wood the instant he used any more than the absolute minimum force in his finger squeeze. Ouch, he grumbled out while shaking his steaming, healing hand. Issei, you should. How could you? Now what's going on here? The blonde wondered to himself as he walked around a corner, only to find that both Matsuda and Motohama were ganging up on Issei while pounding their fists into his body. Jealousy. He asked his inner voice in order to check if his semi-empathetic ability had been restored as well. Not the only negative emotion present, but the major one, Kurama corrected him. Around 55% jealousy, 30% anger, and 15% pride. Pride. He mused in disbelief at the last one. Pride of the pervert? The Biju offered. Ero Sennin did say that existed. Naruto, look above you and 30 feet to your right, the fox suddenly instructed. Trusting his friend's judgment, Naruto followed the suggestion and did just so, and his sharp cerulean gaze came to rest on a group of 4 upper-class women, Rias, Akeno, and 2 women who both wore glasses. Isn't that the student council president and vice president? I don't know, Kurama answered him, but they're both definitely devils like those other 2 up there. Not quite as powerful individually, but above the low jounin in equal strength judging from their auras. You're right, the blonde agreed while narrowing his eyes at the shorter of the glasses wearing young women. Hadn't been able to pinpoint it, but the president is definitely the most powerful of the student council devils. I suppose that means that the student council is really just a front and all the members are just her servants. That settles it. Now I'm certain the polls are rigged, and I'm voting against all incumbents next year. Kurama rolled his eyes at Naruto's words before saying, not what I care about right now, nor ever really will. Can you tell what the smallest of them is doing? She's looking at me, Naruto noticed. His eyes then narrowed and he witnessed the Kaiku doing the same to him. She's looking at me like she's trying to take me apart with her mind and find ways to deal with me. Damn it. I thought I was done with all these frickin' geniuses. I hope you're happy back there, Shikamaru, because I just found your damned opposite here.